Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next installment of the Lake Thoreau Pool project. This is Jeffrey Holzer with Kimley Horn and Associates. I want to thank any Reston residents who are watching this video. I want to thank you for being a participant in this and being involved in your community and continuing this delayed process for the Lake Thoreau Pool project. So let's get right into it. Just to give a recap of where we are right now with this project and where we're moving forward, we originally had a meeting on November 4th to get this project started, and that was an outline of some of the issues that are occurring out on the site right now. The pool is approximately 40 years old. There's some structural issues with the pool. There's some water leaking from the pool itself. So, that was an information session for the community to realize that, we're going to be beginning a redevelopment for this pool. Moving forward on February 11th, that was our last meeting that we had in regards to this project. It was a existing conditions presentation where we outlined the physical characteristics of the site, the challenges and opportunities that we're going to be facing as we continue to redevelopment this site. And then there was also a group discussion at the end of that. And if you didn't have a chance to be a part of that meeting, feel free to go back to the Reston Association website, and that presentation is live on that website. So if you feel you want to watch that before you get involved with this video, feel free to watch that recording so you have the full encompassing idea of what's occurring out on that site. After we had that meeting, we took the responses we received from the participants at that meeting, and we did a download of information to help guide us into these next concepts that I'll be showing in this presentation. Due to the COVID-19 situation, the schedule was delayed. We were hoping to do that in March, but that was right when the situation was ramping up. So this is why we are now providing this meeting here in mid-July. But I'll give a recap to kind of where we are to catch everyone up. So as I mentioned, this presentation will be about a breakdown of what we learned from our last meeting, the guided, detailed information of our conceptual designs, and then our next step of how you can be involved in giving feedback from this presentation. Your feedback will be received between July 21st and August 7th, and I'll get more into the details on how to do that at the end of this presentation. Following that meeting, we'll have on August 25th a Zoom meeting where we will respond to many of your comments, but also provide some refined information on a final concept. And that will move us towards September, October of doing presentations for the Reston Association Board and the DRB. This presentation should run about 30 to 35 minutes. Like I said, I'll do a small recap of the pool from our previous meeting. The majority of this presentation will be on the refined concepts and showing you what's involved with each of those. And then lastly, I'll conclude with how you can be a participant moving forward. A quick objective of what this presentation will cover is that I will go through our last meeting on February 11th and talking about some of the priorities that were told to us from that meeting and how that was help guiding these refined concepts. Step 2 will be going through those two conceptual designs, how they achieve different requirements that we have to meet, and the opportunities and constraints with each of those. And finally, we'll have a community input session from July 21st through August 7th, where you can virtually submit your comments online. So getting into the main portion of our presentation now, let's just orientate everyone so we ensure that everyone is familiar with what site we're talking about. This is the Lake Thoreau Pool site. It's on the corner of Lake Thoreau at the corner of Sunrise Valley Drive and Upper Lake Drive between the Lakeport and Winterport communities. If you were able to attend that February 11th meeting, or if you've just reviewed the recording from the website, You will remember that we left off on this final slide, and this was a summary slide that encompassed the majority of what we spoke to during that presentation. To catch everyone up, the main things that we'll be facing through this redevelopment of the site are outlined in this map. The dashed green line and the highlighted green area is the RPA, or the Resource Protection Area. This is essentially a protection area around water bodies such as lakes that they tried to encompass natural features in those so it improves water quality and maintains the aesthetic features and qualities of water bodies. The RPA rules within Fairfax County were not implemented until the 1990s, where this pool was developed in the 1980s, so it was prior to those rules. So essentially, the rule of thumb now, when you have a site within the RPA, is that you do not increase the impervious area within the RPA. So that will be a challenge for us, that we'll need to maintain a relatively status quo in regards to impervious area. All the black lines you'll see are retaining walls. If you recall from the last presentation, we have a lot of elevation we're dealing on this site, over 20 feet of fall. So one way or another, we need to retain that soil when it's involved with trying to create a large flat area for a pool. This system was kind of a tiered system, as there are lots of steps down, but there may be an opportunity to do one larger wall that creates a larger, more level area that's more accessible for the ADA community. The blue lines you'll see are the current utility lines for stormwater management. With any site, we have to make sure that we're controlling stormwater so it's not going into our building and into our pool. So it's either we're going to be navigating that water around our site or through utilities like this. But that will be another redevelopment that we'll have to ensure gets completed. And then lastly, the image is an aerial. And as you can see, when the trees are full, as they are now in the summer, they provide a lot of shade. And in the pool area, there's usually a mix of where you want sun and shade. But we need to kind of investigate how much shade and what kind of shade do we want on this site. We learned from a lot of our residents that they are okay with the natural shade from trees, but with redevelopment, that may mean we may have to be taking trees out, removing invasive species, or pruning limbs. If that is necessary, we may be implementing some other manual shade opportunities like umbrellas and sails. After our presentation, we moved into a group discussion. We divided into teams, and every team was given a board. During this time, people had the full information from the presentation, and they were able to voice their opinion on what they wanted to see developed in the pool. This was their chance to voice their opinion and say what they really wanted to be involved with the pool program or aesthetic or whatever they wanted to discuss. Each member was then given 3 green dots by the end of the discussion, and these green dots were placed on the boards to highlight or re-emphasize ideas that they were really passionate about or really wanted to see in the developments. By the end of the night, we had 5 boards with lots of ideas and lots of green dots that re-emphasize what was important to these community members. The next day, we took these boards back to the Kimley-Horn office and we hung them up and we did a download of information with our Reston Association team. We talked about what were common themes that people were bringing up, what were things that people were really passionate about, what were things people maybe spoke a lot about, but maybe didn't re-emphasize with a green dot. We did this breakdown and tried to narrow it down to some ideas to really help support a strong, community-reflective design for these next steps. And that was outlined by this 6th board that we created. This doesn't highlight everything that was spoken to, but it is the main points that really were spoken to a lot and were really passionate by the community members that they wanted to see reflected as we continued this process. So as we got into the design development phase, we took a step back and said, what are everything we need to achieve through this project? One of the lists we came up with is some things that are required, and these are things that we will have to do no matter what the design looks like or what is involved with the design, such as pool and health safety codes, making the entire site ADA compliant, improving pool and site lighting, bringing the site up to parking requirements, and all other Fairfax County site plan approval requirements. No matter what we do, we have to achieve these, otherwise we won't be approved to develop the site. I wanted to speak to parking a little bit more about this. Currently, we have 16 parking spaces out on the site. That 16 spaces is a non-compliant per the code today. To break it down simply, the parking is based on the size of the pool, the number of users that can use the pool at a time, which is transversed into a number of vehicles related to the number of users, and ultimately that means the number of parking spaces that you need. In addition, we need to have employees who are working at this facility, so those are a few additional parking spaces. When you go through the calculation, we discovered that we will be required 25 parking spaces for this site. I mentioned that we are currently at 16, so we're uncompliant right now. But what I wanted to bring up is in our designs that you'll see coming forward, we have 25 parking spaces. We are meeting the requirement that is expected. But there's an interesting line in the Fairfax County Code that says if you can prove and have a conversation with some folks at Fairfax County through the approval process, if you can prove a lot of these users of this facility are local and coming locally and close by, you can maybe reduce the parking. So we looked into that and we collected data from the Reston Association of users for this pool from 2018 to 2019. And as you can see, over half of the users are within the South Lakes district, with over 2/3 below the toll road within the Reston community. Not all these users who live in these districts may be able to walk to the pool, but they may be able to bike. And the other advantage is, because this is lake adjacent, maybe there's an opportunity to include boat or kayak parking in adjacent that can help improve the idea that users in the community can come to this site from an alternative transportation perspective. We feel we have the right data to have these conversations with the Fairfax County approval team to try to drop parking spaces. And maybe we'll only drop 1 or 2. But in regards to the RPA, where we need to be careful about how much impervious areas, those 2 parking spaces can make a big difference. So like I said, the concepts you'll see currently have 25 parking spaces that were required, but we're going to do our best efforts to try to get less parking for the site in regards to giving the opportunity to users to come locally from another means of transportation. The data we also had highlighted some of the users of the site. We learned that about 70% of the users are people older than the age of 18. This data additionally helped us and assisted us in programming the development in a way that reflected who really wants to be using the site. When we go back to our checklists, we've run through the required, and now we have checklists of priorities and goals. And these were items that came to us via the comments from February 11th meeting of participants from the Reston community. Priorities were, we need to do all of these because these were the items that people were really passionate about and wanted to see. And those included a spa area, continued lap lanes, a zero depth entry, views outward onto the lake to recapture that great amenity that we have there, some form of shade, whether via umbrellas, pergolas, or tree retention, and lake access to Lake Thoreau. Goals is a shorter list, and these were items that were still heavily spoken about, and we would do every means possible to also achieve within the design. This included some creative art or aesthetic within the site, concession availability, some grassy area, which will be important in regards to an RPA requirement, and they wanted to see a heated pool to maybe allow for longer hours in the pool. I wanted to touch on concession availability just briefly here. When we say concession availability, we do not mean that the building will be renovated to become a snack bar. That is not the direction for the building, because to have that requirement within the building requires a substantially more involved renovation to the building. It starts to require kitchen appliances, the safety requirements within a kitchen, sprinkler system, a fire alarm system within the kitchen, and it can increase the involvement and the design budget overall for the building. When we mean concession availability, we mean that there's going to be availability for people to bring food with them when they visit the pool, better amenities for them to use, such as tables and chairs to eat something there, but also maybe a potential for a food truck to park easily at the site where they'd also have another means of access to food. When we looked at all these, the overall sentiment that we received from community members at the meeting was nothing fancy, just get it done. And this was an idea that we need to incorporate these ideas and just be very simple and practical in our design approach when we involve these. Without further ado, let's go over some of the design concepts that we have created. With concept number 1, you'll kind of see that it's quite similar to what we have previously on site. As I mentioned, we have 25 parking spaces. We had to realign the parking lot just slightly to fit the 25 spaces, and we also had to put an additional row on the south side of the parking lot, removing much of the sidewalk and the treed median that's currently there. At the end of the parking lot, there's a small Lakeview Plaza. It will be a raised area level with the parking lot that you'll be able to gather and have a great view out on the lake. Because we have so much slope from west to east, the sidewalk that cuts through, and once it reaches the plaza, will have to ramp downward. And that's additionally why a staircase is included. Keep in mind, we're trying to keep this ADA accessible for everyone. So if a lot of this needs to be raised up, there needs to be a means to get back down to the current elevation. And additionally, this sidewalk connects to the existing trail that goes east, as well as a connection to a lake access dock on the water. We have an entry plaza on the west side that's very similar to the current plaza. As you can see between the two pink floral trees, that there's a gate there. We have two gates very close to one another that are means for maintenance access and emergency access. But the gate in the entry plaza is aligned closely with the striping for the ADA space. So that would be our opportunity for a food truck to pull up onto the entry plaza, open the gates, and then a food truck would be able to service the entire inside of the pool fenced area. And this is what I spoke to earlier about a concession availability. And this would be an easy way for folks never have to leave the pool area to go get some food. The building itself would need to be renovated. We have the building shown at about a 20% increase in size, and that's done for two reasons. One, for ADA purposes, we're going to need more space and allow for better maneuvering within the locker rooms and lobby. And two, if the pool goes in the direction to become heated and have extended hours, an upgrade in equipment will be needed within the building, so we're accommodating that extra space for those new pieces of equipment within the building. When you come out of the building, typically where currently the children's wading pool would be, We have a pathway that moves into the pool area that frames the spa area. We're incorporating a little bit of impervious area around the spa area to help with our RPA requirement, but also the spa area could potentially become a grotto-styled natural rock feature-looking spa area. As you move into the pool deck, the pool is positioned in the same spot as it currently is. And that's done for the reason that when we need to repair the pool that's currently leaking, we could implement a new shell in the same location for be the new pool shell, and that can help reduce demolition when we get to that portion of the project. The pool is still orientated north and south to allow walls on each end to allow for flip turns for anyone who's swimming in the lap lanes. The current area that is the diving area would be changed to the zero depth entry area. It would be sloping down to a bottom resting area of 2.5 feet with the staircase adjacent to it to allow users to either enter the zero depth entry or the pool itself. As we move west, you'll see the raised deck area. So this was the area that will still be level with the pool deck, but the important thing with this is, in regards to an RPA perspective, is that these raised decks would be an impervious area because rainfall would be able to go through the cracks in the decking and land on the ground and infiltrate naturally. As well, with it being level to the pool, it can increase our pool deck area to allow for more lounge chairs and tables and seating. As well, with it facing the lake, you'd have a great view shed onto the lake and really recapture that amenity that we have. Lastly, I'd like to speak to is that we're controlling the soil retention in this concept via retaining wall. This will require a very large retaining wall around almost the entirety of the site. This is a contrast to what's currently being used as kind of a tier system, but with the one wall system, we can ultimately create a more level, flat, ADA acceptable design. As we go through our priorities and goals, you can see that we achieved the 10 we are looking to achieve in this design. As I continue through the presentation, we're going to look at some sections here to kind of see how does this look in regards to our elevation that we're dealing with. You can see these key maps on the sides. The red line, the long red line you can imagine as being a knife. And if you cut right down that line and then looked at the side, you would be able to see what the elevations look like. The two smaller lines are indicating which direction we're looking. So the existing conditions, you can see there's lots of ups and downs in regards to elevations because of curbs and the pool deck and the ultimate elevation. The design that in this concept is ultimately a larger, flatter, ADA accessible area, as well as the pool depth going from a 4 to 8 foot depth. When we look at a different perspective, when we're looking northward, you can see there's lots of elevation change currently. We have a raised entrance area, the pool deck, and then a very large stepping area to the spa and ultimately back down to the ground. Our design with the entry plaza where a food truck could position, the pool deck, the zero depth entry that gradually goes into the pool, our wide pool, and then our raised deck above the ground creates this seamless ADA accessibility area. The interesting thing too with the raised deck, we have some storage underneath. So if we have boat parking or the lake access on the water, this could become a storage area for kayaks or boats. One more perspective to look at. Again, we're looking north on the south side of the building, existing conditions. We have lots of elevation change, very similar to the last section we saw. And the proposed conditions would show, again, a much flatter area that would make it ADA accessible. When we look at how this site works with the different trees on the site, because it's a redevelopment, there's going to be trees that are going to need to be removed. But overall, we will likely be able to retain the majority of the trees that we have. And of course, as I mentioned before, along the lake, we're probably going to need to be removing some of the invasive species, and we're going to be pruning some of the limbs of the trees that can remain to allow for that really nice view out onto the water from the lake viewing plaza and the raised deck. So that was concept one, and now let's look into concept two. And this one is very different from the last one we just looked at. This would be a complete renovation of the site. Let's start from the left where we have our 25 parking space area. It's orientated north-south, and our food truck availability would be right up by the building. A food truck could park right in that void space, and then anyone within the pool would have to go through the building and through the lobby to go to the food truck. This would allow the employees of the building and of the pool to control who's going in and out and making sure people who are supposed to be there are allowed to be going in and out. We still have our maintained 2 gates for emergency and maintenance access. The building would be entirely new. So again, we're about 20% larger in this building design than our current design. And again, that's to accommodate for ADA spacing and new pool equipment. When you come out of the building, we have some shade structures adjacent to the building to improve the shade in this design, because it's a total redevelopment of the site, many more trees are going to need to be removed. So we need to be more intentional in our shade use. We included a small landscape area adjacent to the building to help with our RPA, but also to kind of create a private little area for the spa. The spa is orientated looking towards the lake to allow users within the spa to potentially have a nice view out onto the water as they sit there. Moving south into the pool area, we have our 0 depth entry area. We got a little creative with how this shape would look. And the nice thing about this design too is the entry point, the most shallow point would be here closest to the building and sloping downward. In the bottom corner, we'd have a nice larger flat area with some seating that we could build into the wall. And this would allow any folks who just want to wade casually in the lower water to have a spot to sit and socialize with the other Reston residents, as long as social distancing orders are no longer in place. The 0 depth entry is also a nice addition to allowing some more shallow areas of water to allow for any children who are using the property to have a smaller wading area for them to splash in. To the left of the 0 depth entry, we have a more gradual sloping staircase into the water. These would be these longer treads and steps that would allow people to gradually get into the water and ultimately into the deeper pool area. The renovated pool would be moved slightly south, but still maintains the same dimensions. Additionally, we have this small little concrete area in between the 0 depth entry and the renovated pool for 2 reasons. One is which, in regards to pool health and safety, we need access around the water areas for any emergency purposes. But additionally, for anyone using the lap lanes, they'd be able to have a wall on both ends to do a flip turn. We'd be able to accommodate lots of seating along the fence line on the west side of the pool, as well on the east side of the pool on the raised deck area. We have the raised deck concept in this design as well, because again, it's a nice addition in regards to an RPA purpose of allowing for infiltration of natural water, but then we're able to incorporate lots of space into the design for seating, tables and chairs, and ultimately still that view out onto the water. The sidewalk continues around the property, on the north side of the building and connects to the existing trail and continues to go down into the lake access dock on the water. When you look at our list on the right, priorities and goals, I would say we're hitting 9.5. You know, because of the redevelopment of this site, we're going to lose a lot more trees, so we're going to lose that natural shade. But we still have means to implement some manual shade opportunities within the site. When we look at kind of these section views again and looking at the elevation changes, these sections are going to be vastly different because we're doing a complete overhaul of the design. In section A, you can see that now we're putting the building where the parking lot used to be, the shallowness of the zero depth entry, and then ultimately the sloping of the deeper pool. But the same idea of the ADA accessibility across the entire site remains consistent. When we look at section B, again, we still have existing conditions has that large stepping, multiple use retaining wall system that's currently out there. With our system, a one walled system creates the ADA accessibility across the site, parking lot, pool deck, zero depth entry, and as well as that raised deck area that would still have space underneath for any boat or kayak storage. And section C, again, you can see the elevation changes and the multiple retaining systems. And again, we have in this proposed concept, a flat ADA accessible area with our large pool deck area, raised deck area, and a deeper portion on the south end of the main pool. As I said before, this concept is much more disruptive to the landscape, so we're going to lose a lot more trees per this design. We'll still be removing invasive species. We'll still be pruning existing trees to allow for great views, but in regards to shade, we'll need to be a little more intentional with getting that on the site, either through pergolas, umbrellas, or something else such as a shade sail, excuse me. I added this slide at the end to kind of touch on the artistic opportunities that we can cover within the site. Whether along the building or the raised deck area, we can incorporate a sculptural art along the building, or adjacent to the building, perhaps there's a mural that is reflective of Reston or the Lake Thoreau. Maybe within the zero depth entry, we can incorporate some sculptural water fountains that can be playful and also squirt some water into the zero depth entry that could be playful for kids. I mentioned in the one concept, perhaps we look into the spa area being a natural feature with stone. Maybe the bottom of the pool has a nice mosaic that everyone can see and enjoy. Perhaps as part of the great public art that is already within Reston, maybe additional sculpture gets incorporated, maybe in the entry plaza or on the raised deck. Or when we have to be more intentional with our shade, maybe we come up with something creative and colorful that would allow for people to see it from the roadway or across the lake. Ultimately, we have lots of opportunities that we can achieve. And if you think one of these is really great and you would like to see one, please comment it to us at the end of this presentation. So we're getting close to the end of the presentation here, and I just added this final slide. So as you participate virtually, you can go back to this slide and kind of see a side-by-side comparison of the two slides. Feel free to pause the video here. So as you write out your questions or your comments, you can look at this slide. Finishing up here, let's talk about how you can, as a Reston resident, you can be a participant virtually. If you have any input, comments, or questions, feel free to send them to capitalprojects@reston.org. You have until Friday, August 7th to do so, and that's about 2.5 weeks from now. So if there's a concept that you think is really great and that's the one you want to see done, let us know. If you think one of the artistic opportunities is a really great one and we should capitalize on it, please let us know. We want to hear what you have to say because as we move forward, on August 25th, the Reston Association will advertise for a Zoom meeting that we'll conduct where we will respond to a lot of your comments and questions, as well as incorporate any final ideas into a conceptual idea that we would like to share with you. So please, as of now, you can participate virtually from now until Friday, August 7th. And then if you'd like to stay involved, please join us on August 25th as we share our final revisions and get prepared for our September and October presentations with the Reston Association Board and the DRB. So with that, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watching this video. And on behalf of the Reston Association and Kimley Horn, we thank you for being a member of your community who wants to be involved and wants to make these projects successful. So as a final reminder, please by Friday, August 7th, send any comments, questions, or ideas to capitalprojects@reston.org. I thank you for your time and have a wonderful rest of your day.